You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Are you ready for AI in cybersecurity? Demand for these skills is growing exponentially for cybersecurity professionals. It's why CompTIA, the largest vendor-neutral certification authority, is developing Sec AI Plus. It's their first ever AI certification focused on artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, and is designed to help mid-career cybersecurity professionals demonstrate their competencies with AI tools. And that's why N2K's Sec AI Plus practice exam is coming out this year to help you prepare for this certification release in 2026. To find out more about this new credential and how N2K can help you prepare today, check out our blog at certify.cybervista.net/blog. And thanks.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions, so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caveat, N2K Cyberwire's privacy, surveillance, law, and policy podcast. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is my co-host Ben Yellen from the University of Maryland Center for Cyber Health and Hazard Strategies. Hey there, Ben.
Hello, Dave.
And on today's show, we are once again joined by our N2K colleague and editor of the weekly Caveat newsletter, Ethan Cook. This week, we are tackling the global impact of North Korean hacking. Ethan, welcome.
Good to be back, guys.
While this show covers legal topics and Ben is a lawyer, the views expressed do not constitute legal advice. For official legal advice on any of the topics we cover, please contact your attorney.
At Thales, we know cybersecurity can be tough and you can't protect everything, but with Thales, you can secure what matters most. With Thales industry-leading platforms, you can protect critical applications, data, and identities, anywhere and at scale with the highest ROI. That's why the most trusted brands and largest banks, retailers, and healthcare companies in the world rely on Thales to protect what matters most: applications, data, and identities. That's Thales, Thales. Learn more at thalesgroup.com/cyber.
All right, gents, it is great as always to have Ethan joining us here today. And why don't you lead us off here, Ethan? What is our deep dive topic this week?
So we're diving into the spicy world of state-sponsored hacking, looking specifically at North Korean hacking, which, maybe not the first thing or first nation that people think of when we talk about state-sponsored hacking, but is certainly one of the most impactful ones.
Well, let's dig in with some of the background here, because in my mind, when I think of North Korea's place on the global hacking stage, they kind of stand alone for their goals, what they're after, why they do the things they do. I mean, can you give us a little of that back history, Ethan?
Yeah, so I think when we look at, let's say, the typical state-sponsored hacker, whether that be a Russia, a China, an Iran, a US, et cetera, a lot of the goals that we're kind of looking at, for the most part, are politically motivated, right? We're trying to destabilize another nation. We're trying to disrupt critical infrastructure. We're trying to degrade services, maybe influence political public opinion, things along those lines. That's the standard. While it's way more nuanced than that, I think that's a good summary.
Yeah.
North Korea is a little different. Some of those goals do apply to what they do. They have a whole other side of their hacking, which is profit generation, which we don't see. America doesn't need money, right? Like China doesn't need money. Like they'll take it, but that's not a goal.
Right.
North Korea, it's driven by schemes that make money. And year over year, they're innovating in that.
And that is because
they are cut off from the world. I think them being, it's really, I was trying to think of when we were writing this up, how to summarize them. And I honestly, the thing that comes to mind is innovative. And that sounds weird to just give North Korea a compliment, but when you read and look into what they've been doing for the better part of over a decade, they have been at the forefront of developing schemes and attacks that just increase profit generation at levels that other nations maybe don't bother with. But for such a small, isolated nation that is completely cut off from like 95% of the world and is hit with some of the hardest sanctions by everybody on the world, they are able to have some of the most successful hacking programs and generate billions, and that's not an understatement, billions of dollars.
Game recognized game.
Exactly.
Necessity is the mother of invention and all that kind of stuff. Ben, you have anything to add there from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I kept thinking of the Shaq meme when I was reading Ethan's summary of like, I wasn't familiar with your game. Like, I'm pretty impressed. Obviously, it's bad. I mean, hacking is bad, and stealing information from other countries and holding it hostage and forcing countries to pay ransom is something that we should frown upon. But if you are going to be isolated from the international community to the point that you can't really build up any wealth if you're not trading with world partners, it's a tiny country. They can't really produce much. Everybody's seen those viral maps of the Korean Peninsula at night where South Korea is very well lit up and North Korea is nearly completely dark. I mean, it's a poor country. So this is, I agree with you, an innovative way for them to bring in revenue, even though it's immoral. Like
Absolutely.
I can understand it from their perspective as a revenue generator. I think you're right, though, that it's just something that doesn't apply to any other country in the world who do it for geopolitical reasons, hacking back for defense purposes. It's or to gain some type of diplomatic leverage. This is a different game entirely, and I think that has really important implications.
Yeah, we should mention overtly espionage as well is a huge part of what everybody else is up to, and North Korea does some of that. But this is is it fair to say, Ethan, that the bulk of their activities involve revenue generation?
Yeah, I would say, and that dates back a while now, right? I think the first major hack that North Korea had was, its SPE or the Sony Pictures hack, back in the early 2010s, where they got very upset over I'm not sure if people remember this, but the comedic movie known as The Dictator, which was, I believe, Seth Rogen, James Franco maybe.
It was the two of them, but I don't think that was The Dictator, Ethan.
Not The Dictator. Oh, why am I blanking on the name? I even looked this up. But
to the internet.
The interview.
Interview. That's what it was. Okay.
The interview where they go in and they're assassinating North Korea's dictator, and there's it's a comedy movie, and obviously Pyongyang took a lot of personal offense at that. And that one was that standard politically motivated attack. You're doing something we don't like. We're going to shut it down. We're not targeting a nation, but we're going to deploy nation state resources to target a company. And I think that was the last time where it felt, I guess the best way to describe it was personal to North Korea. After that, it felt a lot more like, okay, what can we do to get the most amount of money or hit the most amount of things as possible and just break in revenue, whether that was the Bangladesh bank heist in 2016, whether that was WannaCry, or the modern crypto scandals and scams that they are running now.
Well, I mean, let's dig into some of the details of these so that we can have a sense for the scale. In 2016, you had the Bangladesh bank heist. What's the underpinnings of that, Ethan?
Yeah, so in 2016, they targeted the Bangladesh Central Bank, going and specifically targeting the SWIFT global payment system, where they attempted to siphon off just over $950 million. While they did not end up actually getting $950 million, I think the estimate was around $81-ish million. That's still a substantial amount of money, as they were trying to basically just drain out the bank's New York Fed account. And siphon that all out. And that was like a very clear shift of a nation going after banking services and using it as a way to generate money. And it was very clear that this kind of was this shift and this pivot to use cyber attacks as a revenue generating system to help both avoid international sanctions, as well as start using these funds to help support its military programs and its economic goals as a way to kind of harvest and make money, and in the lack of a traditional GDP. From there, while we have WannaCry, which WannaCry wasn't as major of a revenue generator. They only made about $100K estimate. The damages from WannaCry was pretty substantial. I mean, while it was in and out, like less than a 2-week period while it was here, was probably one of the most well-known cyber incidents for the average person to be aware of.
Mm.
It's also something that, like it infiltrated our news environment in a way that previous hacks from foreign adversaries have not, just because it affected so many services that all of us use. And I kind of the canary in the coal mine on this, because I'm not as much in this world as I think either the two of you are. And I certainly was aware of what was going on with WannaCry.
Yeah, and that was when I was just entering college for undergrad, and I at the time was not touched with cyber at all.
God,
and
we're
I
old,
was hearing
Dave.
about it. Right? Sorry to date you guys.
Yeah.
But and I think from there, they have only continued to become more sophisticated and advanced. Now we're seeing them deploy attacks that target crypto exchanges. Crypto has a lot of benefits, and while I think there is a ton of risk associated with crypto as we still try to navigate this new system, there's a lot of lack of regulation. The crypto exchanges are relatively new, meaning that they don't have the years and years and teams that can help secure them from just a technical standpoint. And I think that North Korea has identified that both fight these crypto exchanges, especially some of the newer, smaller ones, as well as people who trade in crypto, are vulnerable. They are vulnerable to both phishing and other social engineering, and they're also vulnerable to just technical attacks. And year over year, they've been putting up and earning more money through these attacks than ever before.
They're also investing in these attacks, which I think is really interesting. Like, it's become kind of a stimulus program. 60,000 North Koreans are employed in offensive hacking operations, which is really substantial. I mean, it's like a driver of economic growth when there just aren't that many drivers of economic growth in North Korea.
Yeah, can you talk some, Ethan, about their weapons of mass destruction programs here? Because, those are really enabled by these activities.
Yeah, so, obviously, the long discourse around North Korea has been, them trying to get access to WMDs, right, to develop their intercontinental ballistic missile program. There, I said it.
Well done.
And their nuclear program. And we can all remember. I think during Trump's first term, we had Rocket Man and that whole kind of tension point that was there, where it was very clear that America and many other nations were very adamant that North Korea could never gain access to these very sophisticated weapons. And North Korea, like many other smaller nations that feel the need to develop themselves, were adamant that it was critical. And the sanctions that have been imposed on them have made it both incredibly hard to just, one, get access to these raw materials that they need to develop, the program, and also just the raw money to develop and, support these programs, whether it be from a technical standpoint, from a teaching people how to, become nuclear scientists, et cetera. And these funds have been instrumental. I think, I can't undersell them enough, how important these activities have been to evading these sanctions and getting in programs. There are getting and supporting these programs. There have been people at the UN who have mentioned how these efforts have been they are so low cost and their yields are so high if they hit, right, that it's incredibly profitable for them. And it's really hard for us to deter them because, one, they're going after other companies and they're kind of going after everyone across the world. So it's not like they're just targeting one nation, they're targeting everyone. And it's really hard. How do we get them back, right? We're not going to invade North Korea and get their cyber team. right? They can just kind of launch the attacks as often as they want, pretty frequently, and continue to garner these money. And because now that they've transitioned to crypto, it's even harder to track and make sure that, there's transparency regarding these things. And enforcing crypto is really hard compared to, traditional schemes where like we have the Swift banking system, which makes it a little easier to prevent funds from being stolen.
Yeah, one of the things that strikes me about North Korea's efforts in both with cryptocurrency, but then also, as you mentioned, their initial forays into attacking the Swift banking system is how much the world relies on norms. And this is another example of if you have a one nation state who says we're not playing by the rest of the world's rules, how that is just it screws everything up, because you have these vulnerabilities, let's say, in the Swift banking system that all the other good faith participants wouldn't exploit because it's not in anyone's best interest. But if you have one bad actor like North Korea, they can go at that, and so the norms get taken advantage of.
It's a different incentive structure when they have no interest in being part of the international community.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to worry about any blowback. I mean, and I think that's been the backdrop of U.S.-North Korea relations over the past 70 years, is it's not really a detente because we're still enemies, but it's like we've kind of learned to live with them and their belligerence, and like they're a problem to be managed and not an existential threat. I think in the minds of most U.S. political and foreign policy officials.
And it's not worth pissing off China for, right? Like I think that's kind of what gives North Korea this freeway to do what they do, because China will never allow that to happen, right? They're never going to allow North Korea to be like taken over or to be the regime to be replaced, because they view that as a nice buffer in the region and an ally who they support. And it's no secret that China supports a lot of North Korea through its foreign aid. So, they're putting all this money, this food, et cetera, trade into North Korea to support the regime. And they're never going to let that go, which kind of gives North Korea this free pass. Because to your point, we have these social norms about not attacking certain things, or at least we had these social norms about not attacking these things. And now we have one country who doesn't want to play by the rules, and no one's really going to invest the time and certainly the potential risk of irritating China in this kind of matter.
Well, I'm thinking of, President Trump is famously using missile strikes against Venezuelan boats that he claims are being used for drugs. Is the China thing what keeps some targeted drone strikes from making their way into North Korea?
I think so. Obviously relations with China over the past, and this is not just under Trump, but under Biden, have not been the best in the past, 5 to 6 years. Things are tense. The South China Sea is intense. Year over year, it feels like we have these roller coaster of emotions where it's like, we've calmed down, everyone seems cool, and then suddenly we look in the news and there's more tensions again. So I think there's this kind of weird stalemate in East Asia where people don't really know where it's going. And I think I don't think anyone wants North Korea to be the kickoff point. Though I do think there is this kind of interesting concept when we talk about norms. We said that traditionally we were not there was no deterrence methods to North Korea hacking, right? Because there were a lot of nation states were not willing to use offensive cyber measures to go after people, right? It was kind of opening Pandora's box, where once you start that whole process, we see where does that logically end up. And we talked about this when we did a deep dive, our past couple of deep dives where we looked at cyber operations and how the global world, from the EU to the US, et cetera, are becoming a little bit more open to saying, well, maybe offensive cyber operations are the solution. Trump has been no secret that he is investing in offensive cyber measures. The EU and the UK have both developed plans to support and put money behind offensive cyber units. So I think that's something to keep an eye out on over the next year or two, as these, things get the funding, they get stand up, and how that looks, as maybe that shifts how North Korea needs to kind of engage with the world with its offensive measures.
What do you make of that, Ben?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I do think so much of that our relationship with North Korea is through their role as an agent of China or as a recipient of China's foreign aid, and I think like we have to be very measured in how we attack North Korea, both kinetically and through cyber tools, with China in mind. I think we'd be far less concerned about offending the North Koreans or hurting the North Koreans one way or another without the implications of this really fraught relationship we have on a number of different fronts with China. So I do think like that changes the way that we engage with North Korea, where if they were just the small rogue state that wasn't supported by the other major global superpower, I think we could more safely ignore them. But I'd say two factors, China and nuclear weapons, make them difficult to ignore.
And now, a word from our sponsor. The Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute is seeking qualified applicants for its innovative Master of Science in Security Informatics degree program. Study alongside world-class interdisciplinary experts and gain unparalleled educational, research, and professional experience in information security and assurance. Interested U.S. citizens should consider the Department of Defense's Cyber Service Academy program, which covers tuition, textbooks, and a laptop, as well as providing a $34,000 additional annual stipend. Apply for the fall 2026 semester and for this scholarship by February 28th. Learn more at cs.jhu.edu/MSSI. Is my perception correct that as opposed to his first administration, where President Trump sort of famously talked about his relationship with North Korea and how he and Kim Jong-un fell in love, right? I mean, there was a lot of rhetoric about how good a relationship he felt he personally had. I don't recall it being that overt this second time around with President Trump. Is my perception there aligned with what you guys feel like we've been hearing?
I just think he's involved in too many other things at this point.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't had a North Korean news cycle. And I feel like if there were some saber rattling, and that could be through a cyber attack, then we'd get like the new 2025 take on Trump's relationship with North Korea. I just think like it became a cause of his in his first term because he did the whole Rocket Man thing. And then it was a major diplomatic breakthrough when he started having this friendly relationship with Kim Jong-un. And there was at least the potential for us to settle this 70-year-long dispute. I mean, I was never particularly optimistic, but I certainly supported engaging in that kind of diplomacy. I just think like with what's going on in Gaza and what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, it's just kind of been off the radar. I don't know if you have a different take, Ethan.
Yeah, I think I do agree that there's just too much going on right now, and they haven't done anything they haven't done anything to a nation state that is worth noting. I think that's also kind of the ingenious part of what they do by going after businesses and specifically crypto, which is already kind of not really connected to nation states. They can hit companies that don't have a lot of like connections to politicians. They're not hitting these major groups. Whereas like WannaCry 2017, that impacted the UK massively, right? Like there's no way that doesn't irritate the UK government because it shut down the NHS, right? For days. As governments become more involved in crypto, I think that could be a tipping point where, we're no longer now just hitting random crypto exchanges that no one's really talking about. We're now starting to hit major crypto reserves that could impact the money that is tied to or partners that are tied to both state and federal governments, et cetera. And I think there is I think a thing that I will be curious about that how it develops between the two nations, especially with Trump. I think there could be, given the tensions that are in the South China Sea and East Asia, I see it kind of turning into this is an excuse to get angry about it. Like this is like North Korea is an excuse for us to kind of have this conversation and launch it off is like, oh, we're going to take an incident, make it a central focus as a part of a larger conversation or to get a larger conversation or incident going.
A la Venezuela.
Exactly.
Yeah. How much is this all empowered by cryptocurrency?
I would say pretty substantially. I mean, they have more scams. They have another system going with a fake IT worker program, which is also worth noting. But I mean, just earlier this year, they stole $1.4 billion from Bybit, which is a cryptocurrency exchange. The infamous Lazarus Group, who was behind WannaCry and the SBE attack, stole 40,000 Ethereum, of which roughly 89% of it, as of a week ago, has gone dark, meaning it will almost likely never be recovered. And while some has been covered, some has been is still kind of out there. That was probably their largest single haul ever, and has already surpassed. They've already surpassed how much they've made in 2022 by almost an additional 7.7 billion, and we still have 2.5 months left to go of the year. So I think them getting $2 billion of untrackable currency year over year is going to be really impactful for them. And I think also on top of that, like I mentioned, they have other scams going with the fake IT worker scam where what they do is they have been, speaking of innovation, they have developed this program pretty much in response to COVID and the remote worker programs that have developed, especially in the IT world, where they have postings, they have someone pretend to be someone from another place, right? And they get access to Fortune 500 companies as a remote IT worker. And some of them are just doing legitimate IT work and sending portions of their check to this Pyongyang, right? To this, siphon off, if they make, let's say, $5,000 a month, they send $4,000 back to Pyongyang. And then on the other side of it, there have been instances where these fake IT workers have stolen company secrets. They've gone through and been able to steal company funds, et cetera. So I think there's also that other more insidious side of that program as well, and innovation again.
So if your online IT guy seems a little too nice.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it could be a North Korean hacker.
No, one of our colleagues who spun off his own business here from N2K, an unrelated business, had 2 incidents of people trying to apply in tech positions who he pretty quickly established were fake North Koreans trying to get jobs. And this is a small startup, right? So it is out there and active.
I was reading an article and there was kind of this commentary of it's just a dark known secret that within these major companies, you absolutely have a North Korean infiltrated. It's just like an accepted reality with these fake IT scams and fake IT worker scams. And I think that speaks to this, which is, before diving into this, I've heard about it, but I'm like, it can't be this major program, right? Like, there's no way. And then the more you dive into it, it's more like, no, they've developed a system that is, they are everywhere. And I think that kind of speaks to this sophistication where, and advancement using systems and programs and the point, staying ahead of the times, right? They're on this, and COVID was a couple of years ago, and they've already developed and fully built out this sophisticated program.
How deliberate are they about staying right on their side of the line? In other words, keeping their activities more at a nuisance level than turning the lights off here in the U.S. You know where I'm going with this?
I think that's a great question because they know that turn the lights off, attacking our critical infrastructure, like that's when we start to care and there might be blowback. But like if they do it at a nuisance level, I mean, $2 billion for them through 2025 is a lot of money. For us in the context of our full GDP, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's a huge deal for the companies that are impacted, but it's not at the same scale. And I think they know that, it's like in the movie Office Space where they have this whole scheme to steal money from the company. And the scheme is to just shave off a few cents of every transaction so that it becomes less noticeable. This is a far less extreme example of that.
Yeah. What do you think, Ethan?
Yeah, I would say that hits the nail on the head. I think their goal is not to create tsunamis. It's to create ripples, right? They're not trying to take down, let's take, solar winds, right? These major hacks or these incidents that shut down major services for days or weeks. Like they've done that before with WannaCry, but that's not their goal anymore. If it happens, I don't think they're going to be that upset, but that's not the goal. I think their goal is to look at it and say, how can we poke the bear enough where the bear and to get our fill, but the bear doesn't feel the need to turn around and swipe at us.
Yeah, I suppose part of this is that they don't want to lose their global sponsor, China. They don't want China to think of them as not being worth it anymore.
Yeah. I think that's 100% an aspect of it. I think their value to China is very transparent. I think, going back to the Korean War, right? When everything's at the 50-50 line, the parallel, everything's okay. That's as long as that's happened. But the minute it starts getting a little too beyond that, it gets a little uncomfortable. Things are not where we want them to be. And I think China still holds the mentality that buffer zone is important, but they're not willing to do everything to support this state if it's not in their incentive. And I think for them, they see North Korea as, hey, they can stand on their own. They have a sophisticated technology program that I'm sure they have some access to. We don't know that obviously, but I would be shocked if they don't. And if they aren't supporting it to some degree, but that is a valuable tool for them. And I think it is a proxy state of sorts for them.
Where do you suppose we're headed long term? I mean, do the people who study these sorts of things think that North Korea's situation is sustainable over the long term?
I think the answer is a tentative yes. You want to go, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's working out for them right now. It is a way to bring in revenue. It's not inviting international blowback, and they're getting better at finding our vulnerabilities. That's what's so interesting about them going after crypto. Is it's like these are our most poorly regulated transactions, and so they're getting more sophisticated in finding things like obscure blockchains where they can go in and steal money. I just think if you look at the pure incentive structure, I think we have to take seriously that this is going to continue and is going to expand.
They're like global rodents, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good description of them.
A certain amount of your foodstuffs you have to calculate are going to be eaten by rodents, and you can fight them, but you can keep them at bay. But anybody who's ever run a restaurant knows you're not going to get rid of them completely.
Right.
Yeah, and as long as they don't become so much of a problem where you need to do a full clean house, and it's just not worth inviting that kind of and investing that kind of both diplomatic cost, monetary cost, military cost, etc., into a nation that just it's not enough of a problem. There are bigger fish to fry. And they are eating up a substantial amount of more attention. Like we talk about how, we haven't had that North Korea Trump kind of butting heads moment yet. And it's because we have two major conflicts going on, both within Europe with, Ukraine, Russia, and within the Middle East with, Palestine and Israel. And those are taking up so much space and so much time right now that resources need to be put forward for them for U.S. interests and European interests, et cetera. It's just not worth devoting the millions of dollars that it would take to really address this problem.
And I suppose the North Koreans are smart enough or politically savvy enough to recognize this moment and just keep their heads down and keep bringing in that revenue.
Absolutely. And I think the only reason why I said tentative yes is, and again, I don't think this is anything in the next year or two, is this pivot to offensive cyber, I think could change some of those things, but it's certainly not going to be a rapid, tomorrow kind of situation. Does that change? I think what it would more likely do is change the tactics that are used or the targets that they go after rather than necessarily what they're doing now.
Are there any indications who the likely people would be to go after North Korea? I mean, would the U.S. go in, cyber guns ablaze, or would we?
Can we get a coalition of the willing?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Would we rely on our friends from Europol or folks who are geographically closer to do things on our behalf, perhaps with our support?
I think it would make sense to have both South Korea and Japan kind of lead that charge. We are pouring, we talked about this in the last deep dive when we went over the big beautiful bill. We just put $1 billion to supporting cyber offensive work and development in the Indo-Pacific Command. I think that while some of that's going to go to support, some of that will go to developing bases out more, et cetera. I think it would not be shocking to me to find out that some of that money has gone to supporting and further developing allies in the region, whether that be Australia, whether that be Japan, whether that be South Korea, their capabilities to act similar to how China views North Korea, act as a way for us to have insight and deter actions in the region without having to get ourselves directly involved.
For our listeners, other than the IT worker scams, are there any day-to-day things that folks need to be concerned about? Does North Korea need to be on their defensive radar?
Yeah, I think, there's been this other scam that has been kind of, I guess, popped up in the past year or two that has becoming, and it's a form of crypto scam, but it's a little different than some of the blockchain attacks that we've been seeing, where, they're going after a crypto exchange where, for a lack of a better word, they're called pig butchering scams, where the whole point of them is they are going to find you on a connection, whether that be through a social media thing, a dating app, etc. And they are going to pose as someone and develop a relationship with you. And some of these relationships last weeks, some of them have gone months. And they are basically trying to become your friend. And they're not even bringing up the scam right away. They're just trying to make you feel connected. And after whatever the set amount of time is where they feel like they have you, they will provide you an investment opportunity through crypto. And sometimes they'll even send you to legitimate crypto exchange sites, and they'll have you convert money into legitimate coins. And then through that process, we'll basically get you to put money into a fake wallet or a compromised wallet, and then siphon off funds. And these have become another scam where they're not just targeting major businesses, but they're also targeting individuals as well.
Yeah, need to look out for your loved ones.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ben, any final thoughts?
I just think this has to be part of people's full suite of measures for cyber defenses is consideration of North Korean hacking. I think it is just under the radar. And I think Ethan just did a really good job summarizing how big of a threat it is to us and why this is something that's going to continue in the future just because it's an economic benefit to North Korea. It's a jobs program, and they are getting more sophisticated at exploiting our vulnerabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Ethan Cook, thank you so much for joining us once again. Fascinating discussion, and we appreciate you digging in and sharing all the fine details with us and our listeners. Where can folks find the Caveat newsletter?
You can find the Caveat newsletter on our website at thecyberwire.com.
What's your 2 a.m. security worry? Is it, do I have the right controls in place? Maybe, are my vendors secure? Or the one that really keeps you up at night, how do I get out from under these old tools and manual processes? That's where Vanta comes in. Vanta automates the manual work so you can stop sweating over spreadsheets, chasing audit evidence, and filling out endless questionnaires. Their trust management platform continuously monitors your systems, centralizes your data, and simplifies your security at scale. and it fits right into your workflows, using AI to streamline evidence collection, flag risks, and keep your program audit ready, all the time. With Vanta, you get everything you need to move faster, scale confidently, and finally get back to sleep. Get started at vanta.com/cyber. That's VANTA.com/cyber. That is Caveat, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to caveat@n2k.com. This episode is produced by Liz Stokes. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. The show is mixed by Trey Hester. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Ben Yellen.
And I'm Ethan Cook.
Thanks for listening. Cyber Innovation Day is the premier event for cyber startups, researchers, and top VC firms building trust into tomorrow's digital world. Kick off the day with unfiltered insights and panels on securing tomorrow's technology. In the afternoon, the 8th annual Data Tribe Challenge takes center stage as elite startups pitch for exposure, acceleration, and funding. The Innovation Expo runs all day, connecting founders, investors, and researchers around breakthroughs in cybersecurity. It all happens November 4th in Washington, D.C. Discover the startups building the future of cyber. Learn more at cid.datatribe.com.